So let's begin with the prayer. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Asatoma Satkamaya. Keeping your mic on mute, let's chant together. Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Let's offer our pranams at the lotus feet of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi and pray for his grace to understand his wisdom and to abide in the awareness that is our natural state. So friends, last time, during the last session, we looked at what are the characteristics of a jnani, of a being who has destroyed his mind and who abides in the no mind state, who is permanently anchored in the self. In other words, he is always aware of his true nature. So we saw that for such a being, nothing remains to be done. We are motivated by 4 goals in our life, 4 purusharthas, which are dharma, kama, moksha. Though in this list, moksha is coming at the end, for a seeker or a sadhak or a mumukshu, whose first priority is liberation or abiding in the self. For such a seeker, moksha should be the outer framework. Anything and everything that he or she does in life should be oriented towards mukti. Even if it is a small task of cutting vegetables, if it is done with awareness, if it is done with the knowledge that it is happening in the body, mind, and intellect, and it is the self that is powering everything, and that self is my true nature, to keep that awareness always in the background of the mind, then whatever we do becomes a means to take us to self-abidance. So dharma, whatever we need to do in this life, whatever is our duty and responsibility, the right way of living, that is dharma, that becomes a subset of moksha. Dharma will always be oriented towards moksha, and artha, that means earning for a livelihood, and kama, desire, all that will be a subset of dharma. So for a jnani, since he is already beyond all these 4, and he is living in awareness of his true nature, none of these purusha apply to him. We saw that there are bandha vasanas and bhoga vasanas. Vasanas are residues. Any thought, any emotion, any experience which is done with the feeling I am the body, mind, and intellect, which is done with a feeling of doership, I am doing this. When it is done with that feeling, with that attitude, the experience, thought, and emotion, they leave behind residues or traces. These are called vasanas. So in this, there are 2 categories. One category is bandha vasana. Bandha vasana originates from one main vasana, which is called I am the body, mind, and intellect, or I am BMI. Because of this, huge groups of thought will get attracted, just like filings get attracted to a magnet. So huge groups of vasanas. This is mine. This belongs to me. I did this. This credit comes to me. This guilt belongs to me. So all these vasanas, vasanas, they group around the main seed vasana, that is, I am the body, mind, and intellect. That is called Deha Bhava, the feeling that I am the body. Body includes Panchakoshas, all five sheets of consciousness. That is body, mind, intellect, Pranamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha. All are included in this. So the minute I feel I am this instrument, then all other vasanas will come. Also, karma phalas will come back to us. As long as I feel I am the doer. But if I disactivate or if I deactivate this magnet, so it no longer attracts ion filings, or if I have just a transactional ego for interacting with others in the world, apparently I have an identity, but within me, I am not identifying with a BMI. I am identifying only with a self. I am always aware. I am peace. I am infinite. I am existence. So this is called abiding in the self. So when a jnani reaches this state, all the bandha vasanas are completely destroyed. Among the bhoga vasanas, some may remain. These don't impede constant awareness of the self. So these bhoga vasanas, that means vasanas or desires for enjoyment, out of the jnani will be like a witness. If these desires arise, then he just witnesses. He does not participate. These vasanas will come and go away. So they are. But if there are any vasanas for lokahita, everybody mute, please. Ravi, can we mute everyone? So if there are desires for bringing about welfare of the world, like a Sadguru guiding disciples, then those vasanas will be implemented by the jnani. For this, we saw various examples also from the lives of masters. I will not do it again. So basically, we understood this quite clearly, that a jnani or a Sadguru has the characteristics of compassion, grace. He looks upon all with equality of vision, no special treatment given to anybody at any time, but everybody is given help continuously. So grace is given continuously to all those who would like to be on the path and who are mumukshus, they're desirous of attaining mukti. We also looked into some of these characteristics, but I will not go into it again. So today we are going to be doing Slokas 16 and 17. We are entering into the Jnana Marga. That means Jnana Marga means by understanding the truth. Sri Ramana Maharshi has said again and again, all that needs to be done is to convince the intellect. Who believes that I am the body mind? Who has this Deha Bhava? If we ask that question, then the answer we get is the intellect believes. Intellect very, very strongly believes that identity is the body, mind, and intellect. If identifying with the self, it is continuously identifying with the instruments. So all that needs to be done, Sri Ramana Maharshi says, is to convince the intellect. We went through Karma Marga, we went through Bhakti Marga, we went through Raja Marga, as we looked at the first 15 slokas of Upadesa Saram. But Ramana Maharshi says, you can come through Karma Marga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, and then come to Jnana Yoga, like you have come as you understood these shlokas. In life, of course, it may take a much longer time. But he says, you can actually start just with Jnana Marga and Atma Vichara if your mind is subtle enough. Because this is a direct path. You don't have to come circuitously. If we have a hill, then if we are going by road, the road winds up the hill. You have to travel many kilometers if you're going road and you want to reach the top of the hill. It is a long route, circuitous route. But suppose you're a good mountaineer. Then instead of going on the road, you just start climbing the hill up. So it is a much shorter distance. What is telling us here, it's not mandatory that you go through the first three. The Chitta Shuddhi, the purification of the mind that you get by going through Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, that is required. If you have this Chitta Shuddhi at this point of time, then you can directly come to Jnana Yoga and Atma Vichara. So before I start with Bhagwan's shlokas, Bhagavad Gita shloka, which is very popular. What is the mind and what are the characteristics of the mind that we normally notice in ourselves? So here Arjuna is addressing this, talking to Krishna. He says, Chanchalam hi manaha Krishna pramathi balavat dridham tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. So he says, oh Krishna, this mind is restless. It skips from one thing to another, one thought to another, one topic to another. Doesn't stay on anywhere. It's so restless. And it is also turbulent. It's agitated. Even if it gets excited, even if it gets happy, there is turbulence in the mind. And it is very strong. It is stronger than me. And it is obstinate. It gets fixed and it doesn't like to move. It is very rigid. It can become obsessive, compulsive. It can keep on focusing on wrong things when I want to shift its attention to something else. So Krishna, this mind is so restless, turbulent, strong, and obstinate. It appears to me that it is more difficult to control than the wind. So this is a statement Arjuna to Krishna. Now just let us look at a couple of parables to understand this aspect of the mind and move on to the 16th shloka. Now there was a Buddhist monastery and there was a monk. There were many monks, but there was this one monk who comes into this story. And one night, felt very hot inside his room. He was not able to sleep. So he thought a walk in the cool air outside in the garden of the monastery would do him good. So he came out and we see in the picture, he's walking. There is a moon in the sky that is reasonably bright. There is a cool breeze which is cooling him. And as he walks, he can hear the crickets chirping. He can hear the frogs croaking. He feels very peaceful. And he's walking in the garden. And all of a sudden, he feels that he has stepped on something that has got squished. As soon as he steps on it, it's all gooey and so he doesn't know what it is. Immediately he steps aside And he thinks, I must have stepped on a frog. I can hear frogs croak around me. That means they must be hopping around. Without noticing that there is a frog in front of me, because it's quite dark, I must have trodden on a frog. Oh my God. I'm supposed to follow ahimsa, but I have trodden this frog. He tries to peer and see what is it. It looks remarkably like a trodden on frog. He's very upset. So he says, no, I will not walk around here anymore. I may step on other creatures. There may be insects, there may be more frogs. I don't want to kill anything more. So he goes back. He goes back into the ashram, into the monastery, and he tries to sleep. It tracks us, or when we are worried, when something very important outcome is expected and we don't know what will be the some is in the ICU, or some important project. I don't know whether I have got it or not. I went for a meeting yesterday. I need that project badly. Will I get it or not? Or I was rude to someone. Why did I do that? Should I apologize or not? So sometimes such worries or such concerns, or it could be guilt, racks us, no? Very. So this monk is twisting and turning in his bed. He can't sleep. Finally, he gives up the battle and he says, okay, I'll just sit. And he sits on a chair and he reclines. And somewhere in the early hours of the morning, he sort of dozes off. And he is woken when there is light out. Yes, let me go now and see. My God, I don't want to see. At the same time, I must know whether I killed a frog or not. So he gets up and he walks back to that place in the garden, which is now very brightly lit, and he looks down. And what does he see? He sees a lot of ripe figs on the ground. So there's a big fig tree, many fig trees in the garden, many fruit trees in the garden. And he happened to be walking under the fig tree last night. That while walking, he has stepped on a ripe fig, which felt squishy. And because he could hear frogs croaking, he assumed, I must frog. Now, a monk is not an ordinary person in terms of mind control. He would have done hours and hours of meditation, many days, many years, till when he felt that he had killed a frog, his mind got fixated, completely fixated, obsessively, compulsively. Not that it's a happy thing to kill an organism, but if you have killed it, there is not much you can do about it. You could pray, maybe for forgiveness, you could pray for the welfare of the frog in the higher realms. At some point of time, after a few minutes, you have to let it go. We all know that. He also knew that. But he's not able to let go. So does this also happen to us often? Difficulty in controlling the mind, because we can't let go of worry. We can't let go of issues that create guilt in us, that create anger in us, that create a feeling of vengeance in us. Obsessively, the mind keeps coming back to that. There is a Vedantic story also about this. There was a dog, and this dog was very fond of bones. So this dog found a bone. It was a little meaty. He chewed on the bone. It was very tasty. takes time to keep on, you have to keep on gnawing at the bone. So he gnawed at it for some time, enjoyed himself. Then he said, enough for today. Let me chew on it maybe tomorrow. Buried somewhere in the garden. And again, he takes it out. Once more, he starts chewing on it. And that bone starts splintering. So one splinter goes and it pricks the soft palate of the mouth of the dog. And that part starts bleeding. The dog is gnawing at the bone and blood is oozing from the wound in his mouth. And what does the dog think? Oh, this is coming from the bone. And it keeps on chewing. So Vedanta says, we get obsessed, we get fixated with the objects of the world, either around us or inside the mind. So once we fixate on something, it creates illusions within us, just like the dog thought that the blood is coming from the bone. We start thinking, when I get pleasure, I am getting this joy from this object. So gulab jamun has joy in it. Masala puri has joy in it. When I eat that, I get that joy. That kind of fixation starts happening. Instead of realizing that joy which is coming from my own self. When we realize that, when we remember that, when we are aware of that all the time, that is called mukti. So we get fixated with outer objects, we get fixated with inner objects also. Now, just another small parable, once again about these monks. There was another monastery which had a lot of young monks. If you look at the picture here, we see so many youngsters, probably 10, 12, or in their teens, late teens. So the master would read scriptures with them for some time every day, and then would say, remember what these scriptures have quoted, remember what they tell you about your true nature. Keeping that awareness in your mind, go and meditate for some time. Among these young monks, there was one bright fellow, and he would go and sit and meditate. Then after 1 or 2 hours of meditation, the master would call all of them, and he would ask, how was your meditation today? Anything you want to share, anything you want to discuss, any questions that you have? And many times other monks didn't share anything, or maybe they gave some short accounts or questions. But this young fellow would always have long accounts of visions. He would tell them in a very funny way, making a lot of gestures and using elaborate language. He would say, there was this demon when I was meditating, and then, this demon, to kill the demon, a goddess came. And the goddess was so beautiful. She danced like this, she danced like that. So every day a new vision. Would make it a nice long account, and all his peer group, they would look forward to these visions, and they would laugh and tease him also. And after recounting all a vision every day, at the end of the vision, he would ask his master, it was a wonderful vision, Now, does that mean that I'm realized? So the master would say, no, go back, meditate for some more time. Can we have everyone on mute, please? So this went on, and One day, after the master told him, go back and meditate, and he asked, am I realized now? The master said, no. As he did every day, he said, go back, meditate for some more time. So this young sat in meditation. 1 hour later, 2 hours later, all the other boys have come back, but this young man, no trace of him. The master gives him another hour. He's not there. So he goes in search of him, and he finds him in the forest sitting in a peaceful glade. He's meditating, he's completely lost. The master decides that he will not disturb him. He comes back. The next day, this young boy gets up from his meditation, comes to his master, and when the master asks him, how was your meditation? He just prostrates to the feet of the master. Without talking, he goes away and never comes back. And when his peer group, all the other little monks, they ask their master, where has he gone? Why didn't he come back? The master says, finally, he has realized the self. Can't be found in visions. Visions are also created by the mind. Visions are also thoughts. They are the projections of a purified mind. A purified mind starts taking the form of that which it meditates upon. Whatever the mind has been meditating upon, it will take the form of that object. Vision, though it is a wonderful experience, it makes you feel so good, it makes you feel so elevated, it makes you feel as though you're occupying a rarefied field of consciousness. Nevertheless, even a vision is only a thought. So first, a seeker gets fixated on external objects and see in the world, then, or simultaneously both go on, but when he realizes after some time this outer world is temporary and the mind turns inwards and goes towards the self, the mind will start projecting things. And a vision is a projection, such a projection by a mind. The mind gets purified, it starts having a lot of concentration, a lot of focus, and starts projecting things as though, when we are meditating, it feels as though the whole thing is actually in 3D. But it is still only at the level of the mind. So this also should not become a fixation, which is why the master would tell the little boy, no, this is not self-realization, go back and meditate again. So the master told the other little monks, visions may come. It's okay, enjoy the visions. But what is important is to ask, for whom are these visions? Who is aware of these visions? And to go back to the witness. That is, look at this vision. Keep the attention always on the witness, he tells the little monks. So here, we have seen that the mind can get obsessed, or it can go on having some kind of interaction with the objects around, with the people, with belongings, with objects, with things, with animals, with plants. The entire outer world evokes different responses from us, from the mind. So the mind can get entangled with these objects, or when the mind starts turning inwards and it goes into meditation, the mind can start getting entangled with the inner objects, thoughts, emotions, memories, visions. So these can all start holding the mind captive. So in this shloka, Bhagavan is telling us it is important to disentangle the mind, both from outer objects and from inner objects. So let's look at the shloka. We'll chant the shloka together. I'll chant once, we can repeat it. Shloka number 16. Drishyavaritam chittamatmanah Drishyavaritam chittamatmanah Chitvadarshanam Tatvadarshanam Chitvadarshanam Tatvadarshanam. Drishya means the scene, whatever we see. Drishya is the scene. Varitam means to withdraw. To withdraw scene. Chittam Atmanaha. What should we withdraw? Chittam, the mind. Withdraw the mind from the scene and Atmanaha, turn it towards the seer. So there is somebody who sees and there is something that is seen. So here Ramana Maharshi is telling us, your mind is seeing the objects around you. Withdraw the mind from what is seen and turn it inwards towards the one who is seeing, towards the seer. Then what happens? Chitva darshanam. Instead of seeing the objects, we are aware of the true nature, which is the self. Who is the seer? The seer is the witness. Witness is the manifestation of the self. So instead of focusing on the objects, we focus on the seer or the witness. So when we keep on focusing on the witness, we get established in awareness. Witness is awareness. So we get established in the witness or in awareness. And then we realize awareness is the truth. It is the substratum. It is the self. It is all pervading. The entire world is manifesting in awareness. So this we become aware. And then we are established in bliss. So look at it a little more deeply. I've just taken a few parallels from Vedanta. This is from Brahma Bindu or Amrita Bindu Upanishad, Sloka 2. We also see this coming in Gita and some of the later scriptures. It says, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho bandhaya vishaya saktam vishayam smritam. So he is saying, for man, mind is the cause of bondage and liberation. Feel we are bound, it is the mind that is giving us this feeling. Transcend bhava, if we transcend the belief that I am the body, mind, and intellect, then automatically I was always free, but I feel I have acquired or achieved liberation. So again, the state, the mind has to recognize that's all. The mind means intellect also. A mind absorbed in sense objects is the cause of bondage. The mind detached from the sense objects is the cause of liberation. So when we look at objects, Ramana Maharshi is not talking only about objects around us like books or TV or a house or a sofa or a laptop, a phone. Also not talking only about thoughts like usual thoughts that we get. I must do this, I must not do that. Once I do this, I'll be happy. Shall I do this or shall I do that? So the kind of normal, regular thoughts that are happening, these thoughts are also objects. Every feeling is a thought, therefore it is a. Every memory is a thought, therefore it is an object. Every experience is a thought, therefore it is an object. But Bhagwan is aiming for the seed object, the core. And what is the core? The instrument, the body, mind, and intellect. As long as I am absorbed in this identity, that I am the BMI, then I am bound. Brahma Bindu, Amrita Bindu Upanishad. As long as I am absorbed in these instruments, in the feeling that I am this instrument, I am bound. The minute I detach myself from this identity, from these objects, called body, mind, and intellect, then I am free. So it is only the intellect and the mind which believe that I am these instruments. It is only one thought that is binding us. This is not allowing us to realize true nature. But the minute I let go of that thought, I no longer feel. So it is the mind and intellect which have to let go of the thought. It is the mind and intellect which are fixating on that thought. If it fixates on that false identity or the false thought, we are bound. If it lets go of false identity, we are free. So this is what Amrita Bindu or Brahma Bindu Upanishad is telling us. And how we see the world from the time we get up in the morning till we go to sleep. We feel that we are in the world, we are part of the world, we have friends, we have family, we have belongings, we have a profession, or we have housework to do. We have something or the other, some transaction happening with this outer world all the time. How do we actually see this world is a question. So here is a slide. In this slide, we have a light bulb outside. I looking at the light bulb. When we look at an object, look at a light bulb or a doll or a vase or any object. Then what happens? The light beams from the object enter the eye. An inverted image of the object falls on the retina. This is a part of the eye. We see a inverted image on the orange background, that is the retina of the eye. Inverted image of the light bulb is falling on the retina of the eye. And the optic nerve, which is connecting the retina to the optic center in the brain, which is slightly above the brain stem. So the optic nerve takes the image of the light bulb to the optic center in the brain, and there it is projected the right way up again. So we see in the brain an image of the light bulb, it is projected the right way up. So the entire time we are looking at this outer world, which I am saying is outside me, I see it, outside it appears so huge, but in fact, I'm able to see it because a tiny image of it is being projected to the right center in the brain. The same thing applies to hearing or touch or taste, all the other senses. They go to the different centers in the brain, and mind gives it a label. It identifies the form and it says this is a light bulb, this is a cuckoo singing, this is a bulbul. What I'm touching is a hard object, it is a laptop. What I'm touching is a cushion, it is very soft. What I'm eating is something salty or something sweet. what I'm smelling is the smell of nice, hot, strong coffee. So actually, this entire huge universe, which we think is outside us, is all the time in the mind. We are seeing it, we are experiencing it through the five senses, only because it is an image in the mind. Image includes all five inputs of the senses. So it is only because of this that we see the world. Says, where is this world of yours? You say that there is a world outside you, but are you realizing that this world is not outside you? It is in fact in your own mind. And how do I know it's in my mind? Because when I go into deep sleep, the mind goes into suspension. Remember, manonasha, manolaya. Manonasha, permanent destruction of the mind. Manolaya, temporary suspension of the mind. In Raja Yoga, we learned these two terms. So every night, deep sleep, my mind is going into laya state. It is temporarily suspended. And the minute it is temporarily suspended, there is no dream happening. And I'm deep, I'm very fast asleep, I'm in deep sleep. Immediately, my body disappears, the entire world disappears. Everything that I see in waking state disappears. So Vedanta says, Bhagavan is saying, whole world of objects which you are saying is outside you is actually all the time in your own mind. Your mind is the world. Your mind is the world. But you have an illusory experience, it is all outside. You think thoughts, memories, imagination, visions, emotions are inside the mind. Objects of the world are outside the mind. But Vedanta is saying, understand through your own experience, through science which has shown every image, everything, every object that you see is an image in the brain, or that you sense through any of your senses is the input which is made of by mind because it has been projected into the brain. Similarly, your thoughts, emotions, they are also thoughts in the mind. The world is a thought in the mind. So they're all thoughts in your mind. So Bhagavan is saying, essentially, what is the seen and the seer? The world, animate and inanimate objects. We have a house, we have a family, we have things, all the people in our lives, the relationships in our lives. We have the world outside the house, the street, the trees, the buildings, the vehicles, the offices, the woods, the mountains, the sky, the sea, the river. All this we think of the world. This has to first appear in the mind. Unless it appears in the mind, if my senses don't work, there is no world. Can't see, hear, touch, smell, taste. There is no world. If my mind is not active when I'm sleeping, my senses may be still working, but my mind is suspended. So even if my senses are working and my mind is suspended, there is no world. In my mind, within me, when I'm fast asleep, there is nothing. If somebody asks us, what was your experience when you were sleeping? What did you see? We think, when I was sleeping, nothing. No thing. No thingness, no object. So state of sleep is no thingness. There is no object. Mind is temporarily absent. It is our daily experience. So the world and all the objects of the world are in the mind. Likewise, desires, feelings, memories, imagination, visions, all these are also thoughts in the mind. And mind is actually nothing but awareness. When there is thought, we call it mind. When there is no thought, we call it awareness. So, when we withdraw the mind from all thoughts and we focus it on the witness that is witnessing the mind, witnessing the objects, that is the seer, we turn the mind towards the seer, then the mind itself is the self. Mind itself is the self. So we'll go to the next, I'll make this clearer. Before that, I just want you to look at this Mandukya Karika and Mandukya Karika Bhashya. So in that, I found two slokas. In chapter Sloka 35 of Gaudapada's Mandukya Karika, he says, loses itself in sleep, but it does not lose itself when under control. The very mind becomes the fearless Brahman, possessed of the light of consciousness all around. So a Karika is a commentary. On this Karika is a commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad. Gaudapada was Shankaracharya's Paramaguru, his guru's guru. And Karika is nothing but a commentary in verse form. It is a poetic commentary. So here Gaudapada is saying, in sleep, mind goes into laya. It is very close to the self. The state of deep sleep is very close to the state of self-realization. The only thing that is missing is the mind and intellect, they are not aware that that is their true nature. I'm experiencing my true nature, but I'm not aware that that is my true nature. So because that factor of awareness of my true nature is missing, it does not result in self-abidance. When I wake up, again I come back to my regular transactional state where I identify with body, mind, and intellect. But if you focus the same mind under control, you're focusing the mind and you're turning it, focusing on the object, you're focusing on the one who is witnessing the object. Then the mind itself, because it loses the object, it does not take the form of any object, you realize it is in fact Brahman. It is nothing but awareness. But when it takes the form of any object, especially when it is identified with body, mind, and intellect, then it will identify with every form. So when it takes the form of body, mind, and intellect, it becomes ahankara or ego. When it lets go of that form and it's focusing on the sphere, it becomes Brahman. Then Shankaracharya wrote a bhashya on Mandukya Karika. So in this bhashya, that is another commentary in prose form. So there Shankaracharya says, when the mind becomes motionless, like a lamp in a windless place, it does not appear in the form of any object imagined outside. When the mind assumes such characteristics, then it becomes Brahman. Or in other words, the mind then becomes identified with Brahman. So it's like a secret revealed. We are grappling how to go about this. And all these Vedanta Bhashyas, Karikas, and Bhagwan's Slokas, they are telling us you are regarding the mind as a demon. As a sadhak, you are thinking the mind is coming in your way. Mind is a demon, but in fact, that is happening because you're focusing the mind in the wrong direction. You're allowing the mind to focus on instruments and identify with the instruments. Instead of that, if you turn it inward like a lamp in a windless space, that means, remember, Bhagwan told us in the beginning, what is meditation? He said, it should be like Ajya Dharaya Srotasa Samam, like a uninterrupted stream of melted ghee or like a flowing stream of water. Uninterrupted focus on the witness without distractions. That means no thoughts will come and distract the mind saying, come have a dialogue with me, identify with me. So without any such distractions, in an uninterrupted stream, the mind is flowing towards Brahman, towards the witness, that is witnessing, towards the seer. Then the mind becomes Brahman, or you can call it as mind identified with Brahman. The salt doll walking into the ocean. When a salt doll walks into the ocean, what happens? It melts and dissolves, and it becomes one with the ocean. It has always been one with the ocean. It just had an illusion that is different. So this we see in Mandukya, Karika, and Shankaracharya's Bhashya on that. So this is what like a tortoise. You can call this shloka drawing the mind from the scene and turning it towards the seer. You can call it the way of the tortoise. It's also a Vedantic example. A tortoise walks with 4 feet and it has a neck and head protruding. It has a shell on top of the body. When it feels threatened, some threat is there, if it feels that something is going to, then what does it do? We see in the picture on the right, it has withdrawn its limbs and head into the shell. So the mind that is outward turned is withdrawn and turned towards the seer instead of the seen, and it is turned towards the seer or the witness uninterruptedly. Then what happens? Is that this is our true nature, that the mind itself is consciousness when it drops its false identity. So we will look at Shloka 17 today and then stop. Upadesa Saram, Shloka 17. Let us chant it. Manasam tu kim margane krite, Manasam tu kim margane krite, Naiva manasam marge arjavat, Naiva manasam marge arjavat. Manasam tu kim? O mind, who are you? Thus inquire. Margane is conduct an inquiry. Margane krute, conduct an inquiry, asking, O mind, who are you? Iva manasam marge arjavat. Na iva manasam. We understand that there is really nothing called the mind. Marge arjavat. This is the direct path to reality. So a great secret has been revealed to us today. What do we mean when we say the mind? Normally, when we talk about the mind, we mean something. We say, I'm happy, I'm unhappy, or I'm busy, I have many decisions to make. In other words, everything we already understood, that whether it is a thought or an emotion or a memory or an experience or knowledge or a skill, whatever it is a thought in the mind. Even this external world is a thought in the mind. So Bhagwan calls the mind a bundle of thoughts. You collect a bundle of sticks together and build it up to a bundle of twigs. So if we take a bundle of thoughts and bind them up, it is the mind. We feel that the mind is a stream of thought, but actually what is happening? The thoughts are all there. Our attention is shifting from one thought to the other. That gives us a feeling of movement. Now, if I point to you, you can see my picture on the screen. Please look at the screen. I'm holding up a mobile, right? I'm holding up a mobile phone. If I ask you what this is, you'll say this is a mobile. Then if I ask you to turn behind you and look at an object which is right behind you, and I ask you what is it, you may say it's a sofa cushion or a window or a curtain or whatever is there behind you. Behind me there is a window or there is a sofa cushion. So I can turn around and see, and I'll say that's a sofa cushion. When I'm looking at the sofa cushion and I'm saying that is a sofa cushion, the mobile is still there. It's still there in my hand. But what happened? I shifted my attention from the mobile to the window. So I was looking at the window. I was not paying attention to the mobile. So that gives me a feeling of movement. The mobile went away, the window came. But Bhagwan says, Vedanta says, thoughts are all there. It is your attention that is shifting from one thought to the other. And this is giving you a feeling of dynamic movement. My mind is constantly moving. Actually, what is moving? Thoughts are constantly moving. No, what is moving? Attention is constantly shifting. So I shift my attention from one thought to another, from one object, from one experience to another. That makes me feel mind is a dynamic entity. But actually, it is only attention that gives me this feeling of dynamic quality of the mind. So one says, mind is nothing but a bundle of thoughts. So when you start removing the thoughts, when you dissociate from the scene, you disentangle your attention from the mind and you take it to the seer, what happens? You find when there are no thoughts, there is no mind. So consciousness with content that identifies with the content. When consciousness identifies with the content called thoughts or objects or instruments, it becomes the mind. It becomes limited. It starts feeling I'm only this much. Only this body, this mind, this intellect. That is the mind. The minute it identifies with this and identifies with the seer, what happens? There is only consciousness. There is no mind because it is no longer identifying with the objects. So Bhagwan is saying when one encounters what is the mind, or O mind, who are you? One finds that there is no mind. This is the direct path to reality or truth. The same thing, there was a great saint by the name of Basavanna, the Basaveshwara, who know Kannada would have probably heard this Vachana, whatever he wrote. Vachana. So this is in Kannada. ಎನ್ನ ಚಿತ್ತವು ಅತ್ತಿಯ ಹಣ್ಣು ನೋಡಯ್ಯ ಎನ್ನ ಚಿತ್ತವು ಅತ್ತಿಯ ಹಣ್ಣು ನೋಡಯ್ಯ ವಿಚಾರಿಸಿದೊಡೇನು ಉರುಳಿಲ್ಲವಯ್ಯ ವಿಚಾರಿಸಿದೊಡೇನು ಉರುಳಿಲ್ಲವಯ್ಯ ಎನ್ನ ಚಿತ್ತವು ಅತ್ತಿಯ ಹಣ್ಣು ನೋಡಯ್ಯ ನೋಡಯ್ಯ ನೋಡಯ್ಯ. So here Basavanna is saying, my mind is like a atti fruit. Atti is a wild fruit that grows in forest trees. Actually, young, there were groves around this house. Jayanagar was like full of groves of trees. Then there were many atti trees near our house, and atti fruit would be fallen. So atti fruit is something like a wild fig. If you look at it, it looks red and luscious and attractive. You feel like eating it. But if you pick up an atti fruit, and it's very soft, so if you do that like a fig, you can just break it open. And when you break it open, inside, there is no flesh. There are only tiny seeds, which are not really sweet. And many atti fruits have a lot of worms inside them. So here, Sri Basveshwara is saying, my mind is like the atti fruit. If I examine it deeply, if I remove all the seeds and all the worms, then there is nothing inside. There is no other flesh. There is no other taste. There is no substance at all. So he is telling Shiva, whom he calls Kudala Sangamadeva, his favorite deity, Ishtadevata. He is telling Lord Shiva, you have created my form, prapanchada dambinalli, ennanondu ruhu maadi, nee virisidirayya Kudala Sangamadeva. You have created my form and placed it in this world of glamour and hypocrisy, O Kudala Sangamadeva. If I turn away from the world, it is not what it appears. The world appears as though it is outside, but if I turn away from what I see and I inquire into what my mind is, I will find my mind has no substance at all. There is no mind. So the same thing is echoed by Sri Basavanna. Just a few metaphors from Vedanta for the mind. Onion. I think many people don't like onions, right? We try to get away from it if we can, because it makes our eyes water. But suppose we took up an onion and we take off the outer peel, then we find one more sheath inside, a pinkish white sheath. I remove that, then I find one more, I remove that, and I remove that, and I remove that, and I keep removing every sheath of the onion. Finally, what is left? Nothing. If I disidentify the mind, if I withdraw the mind from all the objects, it is very difficult to withdraw the mind from every individual object. So what does Bhagavan say? From the magnet which is attracting all these other thoughts. What is that magnet? The magnet is the thought, I am the BMI, the Deha Bhava, I am this body, mind, and intellect. Withdraw the mind, the attention of the mind, the focus of the mind, withdraw it from that thought and turn it towards the seer. Who is aware of the thought? Who is aware that I have this thought that I am the body, mind, and intellect? There is a witness. There is somebody who is aware of it. So turn your mind towards this witness, which is the self. Actually, there is nothing called the mind. There's another example. We see a nice, pretty blue pot in front of us, a ceramic pot. There is space inside the pot. There is space outside the pot. In Sanskrit, the space inside the pot is called ghatakasha. Ghata is pot, akasha is space. So, the space inside the pot, bhutakasha, the space physical space outside the pot. Actually, if we see, the space in the pot is not separated from the outside. The top of the pot is open and it is the same space that is inside and outside. But because the pot is there, because there is a container which seems to contain space, it is giving us an illusion that there is this smaller space inside the pot and some other bigger space outside the pot. In fact, both are one. So a mind that is identifying with the container, it is identifying with the instrument called body, mind, and intellect. That is like the Ghatakasha. The Akasha inside the pot, if it thinks, I belong to this pot, I am limited, I am small, what is outside is vast, that is not me. So it has the illusion only because it is identifying with the pot. But if it turns towards the outward space and it says, that space and this space have always been the same, they have never been different. In essence, they have always been the same. Therefore, I am the Bhutakasha. So that is when the mind, we realize the mind is actually Brahman. It is not different. Then we have this beautiful calm lake. Someone throws a pebble into the lake, or there is a lot of wind. Then what? Ripples form on the lake. So ripples are like thoughts. The calm lake, the water is like awareness or the self or consciousness. Ripples form on the surface of consciousness. When we throw a pebble inside, the pebble is I am the BMI, and we see a lot of circular ripples forming. Those are all the other ripples. The minute I see the BMI, I will say this is my dress, I am fat, I am thin, I am fair, I am a woman, I am a man, I am an architect, I earn this much, I am rich, I am poor, etc. All those ripples will. But I don't throw the pebble. If I am still, if no ripples form, that same water is the lake. Identify with the ripples. I am the limited mind that is identifying with the content. If I remain still, I am self. But I should not identify. Remaining still for small periods of time is not self-abidance. Remaining without thought is not self-abidance. Thought is not taboo. We think a thoughtless state is the self-abidance state. Mind is a tool. Intellect is the tool. So we need to use these tools. Not identifying with the thought is what is important. Thought may arise. And many times thoughts are required to perform tasks, but not to identify with the thought and say, I am happy, I am sad. Sad memory comes, I am sad. Happy memory comes, I am happy. This is the problem. To permanently not identify with the thought, not identify with the instruments, we should be 100% convinced, the intellect should be 100% convinced about its true identity. When that happens, thoughts may arise, but we don't identify with them. We don't identify with any objects. All identify only with the self, only with awareness. We're coming to the end of the presentation. This is the last slide. Coming to the disciples of Bhagwan, every time, with every talk, I have been including the incidents of one or two disciples. because then we are able to see how Bhagwan guided these disciples and how they fought their own battles during sadhana, in moving from the seen to the seer. Today we are going to look at Major Chadwick. He was an Englishman who read the book of Paul Brunton. We also had the experience of Paul Brunton in one of the sessions. We understood that he wrote the book called Search in Secret India. I think many of you may have read that book. So in this book, Paul Brunton writes about his experiences of coming to India and journeying through India, meeting many great Mahatmas. Among them, he also met Bhagwan Sri Ramana, whom he accepted as his master, and he wrote about him in the book. I think there are 3 chapters on Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi in this book, Search in Secret India. And when it was published, many learners read that book, read these 3 chapters about Bhagwan, and they started coming to Tiruvannamalai, a very, very small, insignificant town in India. So like that, when Major read those 3 chapters, remember, he hasn't met Ramana Maharshi yet. He hasn't seen him, he hasn't spoken to him, nothing. Immediately he decided, is my Guru, I am going to India, I will settle in Tiruvannamalai. And he burnt his bridges. He sold off his possessions, he said goodbye to his and family and relatives, and he came to Tiruvannamalai. He came to Ramanashram. We have his picture there on the left, and on the right, behind Bhagwan, the very tall Englishman with a beard standing directly behind Sri Ramana Maharshi. That is also Major Chadwick, who later came to be called Sadhu Arunachala. He has also written a few books which are very interesting, his own accounts, and he authenticated dialogues with Bhagwan, day by day with Bhagwan, talks and such books. He sat with Bhagwan, went over the answers. Is that exactly what Ramana Maharshi wanted to say? And he authenticated the questions with the questioners. Is this what you asked? All the publications which have been verified by Major Chadwick. So he came to the ashram, and Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi was very, very welcoming to him. He was the first listener to come to Ramanashram and settle there. He came in 1935, and Bhagwan Vinod took Mahanirvana. He left his body in 1950. So 15 years he was. After Ramana Maharshi left his body, he continued to be in the ashram till the end of his life. That dedication, that conviction, country, those luxuries, a different way of life, born in a different religion, he just gives up everything and he comes and settles in Ramanashram. So when he came and said, you're welcome, and he made 2 recipes, especially for Major Chadwick, which are served till today in the ashram. Foreigners. One was called, in those days, because Englishmen were thought to be our masters, they were called by the local people as Dorai. Dorai means king or lord. So in Tamil, Dorai is pronounced as Thorai. So Thorai Kootu. Thorai Kootu means a vegetable preparation without chilies, made for Westerners. And Thorai Rasam. That means a rasam or a dal preparation, gravy preparation made without chilies for Westerners. So these 2 recipes Bhagwan gave kitchen, and he said his stomach will not take our kind of spices. Please cook these for him. And every time idlis were made, he was served ghee and sugar instead of chutneys or chutney pudi. and I'm told that these customs are still continued in the ashram. So a new tradition started with the coming of Major Chadwick. He was allowed to build a room within the ashram campus, and he stayed there. Completely, he was focused on his sadhana. He was finding it difficult to sit on the floor. So Bhagavan said, my father used to have something called a meditation belt. We see him wearing it in this picture. So Ramana said, you get a meditation belt like this, you wind it around your back and your legs, then you can sit for hours. So Major Chadwick would sit in one and meditate for hours together. In between meditation, if he wanted some relaxation, he would just sit in his room and read books. Bhagavan would often visit him in his room and discuss things with him, guide him. Then he would again sit and meditate, and he would spend as much time in the presence of Bhagavan as possible. He would say, I have a living, speaking God in front of me, and I will not miss an opportunity to spend time with him. So this was going on. This was how his life was going on. And meditating, after some years, a fear started rising in his mind. He would withdraw his mind from the scene. We are looking at this story of Major Chadwick for us to see how his sadhana moved from scene to seer. So he would withdraw his mind from the external stimuli. He would turn it inwards. He would withdraw it from the inward stimuli and turn it to the witness. We will also be doing this sadhana for 5 minutes at the end of the session. So he would do all that and he would sit. Then a fear would arise inside him, like panic. Not initially, but after some time. So any doubt, immediately he would run. He would be practicing in his room, maybe early morning. Then immediately he'll run, find and say, Bhagavan, see, this is happening. This fear is just like panic is erupting inside me when I sit down for meditation. So Bhagavan said, nothing to be worried about. It's very natural. The ego, I am the body, mind, and intellect thought, that is feeling threatened because you're doing intense self-inquiry. You're turning repeatedly to the seer and disentangling yourself from the scene. The ego or the feeling of Deha Bhava is getting threatened. That's all. So as soon as the fear comes, switch your attention from the fear to who is aware of the fear. Very simple switch of attention. My attention is on panic, it's on fear. Instead of engaging in a dialogue with the fear or trying to suppress the fear or any such thing, just switch. If you want verbally, you can ask, who am I? Who is aware of the fear? I, who am I? Or non-verbally, switch your attention from the fear to the witness who is aware of the fear. Who is aware of the fear? That's all. The minute Major Chadwick started doing it, he says, my fear disappeared. I used to find it sometimes a little challenging to switch from I am the instruments to I, who am I, or the silence or the witness. It would puzzle me sometimes how to do it. Or some days it would be easy, some days it would be difficult. But continuously he persisted in doing this. So then one day he had this one luxury. His life was very simple. He permitted himself only one luxury. He had a small tub. So he would take a bath in the tub every afternoon. He would take a bath in his tub in the veranda of his cottage. So one day he's just sitting in the tub and he's taking a bath. He says, I was so relaxed, really thinking about anything at all, when suddenly I became one with I am. There was no duality. There was no seen and seer. I just became the seer. Just like that. And I was so excited. I just got up, I wrapped a towel around myself, and I ran into the meditation hall. It was afternoon, after lunch, Bhagwan was sitting alone. Meditation hall, everyone had gone to take rest. And I stood dripping wet in front of Bhagwan, and I asked, Bhagwan, is this it? You know this? Is this it? So Bhagwan said, this is that. This is that. So Major Chadwick says, we think it is so complex, but actually it is the simplest thing in the world. It's simple. Don't make it complex. Just understand, you have to switch from what you see to the one who is seeing. From the seen to from the object to the witness of the object. That is all that needs to be done repeatedly. Vasana is strong. So repeatedly mind goes towards the instrument or the object. Repeatedly, as soon as you become aware, bring it back. Who is aware of the object? Just keep bringing it back. That is all that needs to be done. With this, we will end today's session. I will just come out of the presentation. If you have any questions, either unmute and ask, or you can type it on the chat. Is the way to turn, Padmini, we have a question. Is the way to turn towards the self by unraveling each thought, by following the thought to its source and see how it originated, or not to give thought any attention? So it is not unraveling. You don't try to see what is in the thought. What does this package contain? Untie and open and see, when did this originate? 20 years back, I was hurt and it started. No, we don't do that at all. Neither do we simply ignore the thought. We just use the thought as a vehicle to go back to the source called the self. So if we say, for whom is this thought? It is for me. Who am I? It is like using thought as a vahana. We see Ganesha riding on the mouse, we see Saraswati riding on the peacock, etc. We ride on the thought, metaphorically speaking. Thought comes, we are not worried. I never say I don't want thoughts. That is not vichara marga. Thought comes. So when the thought comes, I see that there is a thought, and then I, for whom is the thought? It is for me. Then who am I? There is silence, because the mind does not know the answer. I just stay in the stillness. But while, even asking the question, who am I, becomes tedious. Even that may not be required. So then, all that non-verbally shift attention from the thought to who is aware of that thought, from object to, from the seen to the seer. That's all we do. Lavanya is asking, hello ma'am, a basic question regarding the mind. It is said that the self is blemishless. If the mind is self or consciousness, how can it be under an illusion? When the self identifies wrongly with the instrument, then it identifies with the content. It becomes the mind, it becomes limited. Then it is no longer called consciousness. It is called a limited entity. It is a mind. Mind may have a lot of blemishes. As long as it associates with those blemishes, it will feel I have all these blemishes. But when the mind associates with the limitation, that is giving this definition of mind. I am the body, mind, and intellect. I identify with that. So I say I am the mind. The minute I stop identifying with that, the self is always blemishless. All this is appearing like a dream. It is like in a dream, I'm sleeping on my bed, right? And then a dream. So in my dream, I'm going out somewhere, it is raining heavily. A truck passes me on the road. The truck runs over a puddle and that water splashes all over me. I'm wearing a beautiful white dress and that muddy, dirty water splashes all over me and I become wet and slushy and dirty. But when I wake up, is my pajama or my night clothes or my dhoti or sari or whatever I've slept in, is it soaked with flush water? Am I wet? Am I dirty? Am I dripping? No. So that was only a dream. It was not reality. Like that, just as the sleeper is not affected by what happens in a dream, the self, which is ever present, which is unlimited, which is actually the only reality, it cannot have any blemishes. But if it identifies with the illusion, in my dream is very real, body is very real, the truck is real, the puddle is real, the slushy water on me is real. It's only when I wake up, it becomes unreal. So the same, as long as I identify with the illusion, the appearance or manifestation is just an illusion. I'm identifying with the illusion, then I feel I have blemishes. But the realize I am the sleeper. In some dreams, it comes to you, in the dream, oh, I'm only dreaming, It's just a dream, it's not happening. Then you are not so bothered and then you wake up after some time. But in this life, which is also a dream, I have forgotten. I'm identifying with the illusion. So when I'm identifying with the illusion, there can be blemishes. But when I identify with the self, then self is ever blemishless. It was never blemished. It can never have impurities.